one of my favorite comparisons to make, especially when we get a new device. So it is the brand new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. I was just at Galaxy Unpacked in San Jose for the launch of this against the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which has been out now for around like 6 months. Two of the biggest flagships. So the first thing that you need to consider is obviously pricing. So at launch, the Samsung is technically $100 more than the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So we are looking at $1199 for the iPhone and $1299 for the Samsung. In Canadian dollars, there's only like a $50 difference, which is nice, but obviously because of the Canadian dollar, it's naturally more expensive because our exchange is just terrible. With that said though, iPhones tend to hold their pricing for the entire year, and until they come out with a new model, you won't really see any other discounts. On, say, for example, Samsung models, you can get them like $100, $200 off within a couple months. And if you wait like up to a year, like if you look at the S24 Ultra now, you can save like hundreds of dollars. So these come down later on. But if you're looking at them right now at exact launch, $100 more for the Samsung. So in terms of the overall design, they honestly look very, very similar. So on the S25 Ultra, we have a slight new design change. It actually looks a bit more similar now to the iPhone. So the S24 Ultra was a bit more like sharper. The edges kind of dug into your palm. You can see here that the rounded corners looks similar to what you have over on the iPhone, both made of titanium. I guess depending on like the color options that you end up going for. I've got the S25 in titanium gray, but I guess the hero color of it is silver blue. You've obviously seen my other unboxing. If you missed it, there's 4 different color options that you can pick. I think like the black or the white silver are like the safest ones, but for example, on the iPhone, the hero color for this is desert titanium, and you have the other options as well, so you can kind of take your pick. Both feel super premium, nice and hefty in the hand, but we do have some differences, I guess, like physical button differences. So you can see obviously on the iPhone, you've got like the on and off / main button, but we do have the addition of the camera control button. Now that I've used it for the past couple months, honestly, I rarely tend to use it. Sometimes I accidentally trigger it with my palm when I'm holding my iPhone to take a photo. I still think zooming in using your fingers on the screen is a bit easier. Plus, if you're using the camera control button, it actually shakes the phone slightly when you're trying to zoom in. So I don't use it that much. I wish you could actually change it or set it to something else like they have for like the action button. So that's the other side. So it has obviously the volume rockers, the action button, which you can kind of change to whatever you need. Whereas on the Samsung, you just have the standard ones. All of them actually just live on this side, whereas the other ones are completely blank. The S series has now always had the S Pen since they removed the Galaxy Note series, like RIP to that. But you will see with that new redesign, the S Pen actually sits not as flush. It kind of ever so slightly juts out, and unfortunately, Samsung has actually removed Bluetooth capabilities from the S Pen. So the main thing that I would use it for is to take remote selfies. You could use that as a remote trigger. That no longer works. You can still use it for, all things writing on the screen, signing documents. If you're an artist, if you're anyone that loves like an S Pen, this is obviously the model that you would go for. On an iPhone, there is still no support for a stylus. I would love to see like some sort of like Apple Pencil Mini be some sort of option. You could just kind of like slap that on like via MagSafe. I think that would be very cool, but unfortunately to this date, no stylus on the iPhone. Most probably you'll be rocking like a case on both of them anyways for the design. My favorite and go-to one for the iPhone has just been this one from ESR. This is like their hybrid case. It does have this nice little camera guard, which actually flips up and you can use that as a little stand. Obviously that has the MagSafe enabled ring. And since the Samsung phone, this doesn't have any actual magnets on their hybrid case, it actually has an included MagSafe adapter. So the magnet is built into the case, so you can now actually use this with all your other MagSafe accessories. And if you decide to rock your phones completely naked without any cases, whether it's the iPhone or the Samsung, at least for the one thing, just get a screen protector on it because you can never get that repaired. So just get these ones from ESR. Once again, they're super cheap. They come in packs of 3. They have privacy screen protectors or just the standard tempered glass ones. Super easy to install, and as phones become like less shatterproof from dropping, they actually scratch a bit easier because technically the glass is softer, helps with shattering, but picks up scratches. So just get these screen protectors. So like I mentioned, for the displays now, they're both 6.9 inches. The bezels have shrunk on the Galaxy S25, but they're still actually a little bit thinner, just like ever so slightly. Over on the iPhone, you actually won't be able to tell the difference. Both have like 120 hertz. You've got ProMotion over on the iPhone, standard 120 hertz on the Samsung. The iPhone's tech is Super Retina XDR versus the Dynamic AMOLED 2X. One thing that I will say for the Samsung device, which I find definitely way better better is the new Gorilla Glass Armor 2. So this is the world's first like anti-scratch and anti-reflective coating. Even the S24 Ultra had a bit of anti-reflectiveness. This is something that you really notice with both devices. Like even here, like in my studio right now, I've got some pretty bright lights and kind of like leaning the phone side to side. I'll show it a bit better like in B-roll, the anti-reflectiveness on the Samsung. So if you're watching like a lot of content, which most people do on larger displays, you're using this all the time. If there is any sort of glare, it really gets cut down on the Samsung. So that's one big plus. Like I actually prefer the display on the Samsung. In terms of overall like brightness, 2600 nits versus 2000, for me, the Samsung display like hands down wins, end of debate. In terms of the next big thing, which is definitely like the camera. So obviously you've got the 4 cameras on the S25 Ultra, so it's still the standard 200 megapixel like main, or I guess like the wide camera. It has an updated 50 megapixel ultra wide, 50 megapixel telephoto, and the 10 megapixel 3 times. Samsung ran that whole campaign around, zooming to the moon, being able to take photos of the moon. You can theoretically still do that. Do you use those photos all the time? No, but I will say from the S24 Ultra, this is actually better processing. So even like those really cropped in photos, they look sharper. I will say like the zoom range switching between cameras is now a lot smoother. They've got this new slider mode. When you are recording video, you can increase or decrease this slider to give you the same or constant zoom. So obviously you can go really quick, or you can dial that back and zoom out, and it's a lot smoother than before, than kind of switching between. So that's a nice option. I know a lot of people were kind of talking about that, but you can see I'm zooming in all the way and I can get right up to that person's license plate. Thankfully it's hidden. Sorry if that's your car. And of course, on the iPhone, that gets up to 5 times. That is optical. And if you want to zoom in more digitally, that caps out at 15 for video. And if you switch to photo, that gets up to 25. The rest of the cameras on the iPhone, you've got that 48 megapixel main. And this also had that upgrade to the ultra wide, which is also 48 megapixels. So you can kind of compare them between the two. I've taken a lot of sample shots. Maybe once again is really preferential on your color profiles. You can still have color options now, or I guess like photographic styles. We had that on the iPhone. You have something very similar on the Samsung. So kind of take your pick. I'll leave it very subjective, up to you. But in terms of video, I still find iPhone video has that like really special look about it, but we do have the improved log mode on the Samsung. So now these both record like in their own log footage. Obviously this is like ProRes RAW. This is its own log footage. What I actually like on the Samsung, you can actually grade that within the phone. You just kind of swipe up and it has the option to grade, whereas anything shot, say like ProRes on the iPhone, you still need to import that to Final Cut, to whatever editor you use, and then you can apply the LUT or whatever you use to convert it in post. And lastly, for video, both shoot 4K 120, both shoot in 10-bit, but I guess the Samsung can technically shoot in 8K. So both are your best in class for video and photo performance. I don't think you'll be disappointed in either. I think it really depends on what is suited for you. So that's kind of the options for both photo and video. And that kind of goes to the main next point, which is theoretically like iOS versus Android. I think that will be your biggest deciding factor on which device to pick. So I typically recommend for anyone that's deciding between these, like, do you have a MacBook? Do you have an Apple Watch? Do you already like use AirPods? If so, the Apple ecosystem is something that is so strong. They call it like the Apple black hole, where you just get sucked in. Things like AirDrop, like iMessage, FaceTime, like continuity, those all work super seamlessly across all your devices. Like when I was recording log footage, say on my Samsung, I edit on my like MacBook Pro, I use like Final Cut. The easiest way for me to send that file was to upload that to Google Drive. I then had to like download that separately. Samsung still has like no easy sort of AirDrop way to get a file from my phone to, say, my MacBook. But on the flip side, say you're on a PC, or if you already have, say, like a Samsung laptop, you have that quick share feature. Obviously, all those same things like that continuity, you can do like copy and pasting. So really, it depends, I think, what ecosystem that you're really tied to. And in terms of like performance, you're literally like splitting hairs on the difference. Both are flagships, both can pretty much like crunch whatever that you throw at it, multitasking, playing games. scrolling like the death doom, the death scroll on social media. There are some social apps like obviously Instagram, TikTok, which has been banned in the US. I'm in Canada, so I've always had it. I think if you had it previously, you can still access it, but it's no longer on like the App Store or the Play Store. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Those are just slightly better tuned for Apple or for iOS. I find that Android has caught up. The compression isn't as bad, but definitely for social media, the quality is there on iPhone. For gaming though, on Samsung devices, on like Android devices in general, they tend to be better. This has the new Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, 40% larger vapor chamber. Both are technically now 3 nanometers, but the gaming experience on the Samsung is just, way better. It's an open ecosystem. If you're running any emulators, games just seem to run smoother, even though there are ports over onto the ones like on the iPhone. I still think Galaxy takes the cake for any sort of like gaming experience. And last but not least, obviously like customization. So we have the new One UI 7 over on the Samsung. It's actually pretty clean, but a lot of cues are on point with what is on the iPhone. Both have tinted icons. They look pretty clean. You can customize like home screens, which once again look very similar on both. It's just the end choice, which experience for you will be better. Last but not least, like battery life, 5,000 milliamps on the S25 Ultra versus 4685 on the iPhone, but that's like where numbers kind of like end the difference. I would say that the optimization of iOS is better. This is still the king of battery life, like in terms of say video playback. 33-ish hours versus 31 hours over on the S25 Ultra. It really depends how much you use it for, but that is kind of like my comparison of both devices. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about the camera samples, and if you are picking one, sound off, keep it civil, keep the Apple fanboys versus like Android to a minimum, and I will catch you in one of my next vids. Peace.